The old man stepped out of the shadows between the convenience store and the abandoned gas station, his worn combat boots silent on the cracked asphalt. Ike Maddox moved like smoke when he wanted to. 73 years old, but still carrying himself like the soldier he'd been decades ago. The three teenagers kicking the smaller kid against the brick wall didn't hear him coming until he was close enough to touch them. "That's enough," Ike said quietly. The biggest of the three, a lanky kid with gang colors tied around his head, looked up with surprise that quickly turned to annoyance. "Mind your own business, old man." Ike stepped between them and the boy on the ground. He didn't say another word, just stood there in his faded army jacket, hands loose at his sides, backpack slung over one shoulder like he'd been carrying it for a lifetime. "I said move," the kid repeated, louder this time. When Ike didn't budge, the teenager shoved him hard in the chest. Ike stumbled backward, his worn boots catching on the uneven pavement. He went down hard, his backpack spilling open and scattering its contents across the alley. The three kids laughed. The leader pulled back his foot and kicked Ike in the ribs. Then his friends joined in, taking turns like it was some kind of game. What they didn't know was that Marcus Webb, the night security guard at the convenience store, had been watching from inside. Marcus recognized the old man immediately. Had been trying to place that face for months. When the beating started, something clicked into place in his memory. Fallujah, 2004. A dusty street, an IED, and a staff sergeant who'd pulled Marcus from a burning Humvee. Marcus grabbed his phone and started recording through the store's front window. The security camera on the corner had been broken for weeks, but the one inside his pocket worked just fine. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later, but by then the teenagers were long gone, and Ike was sitting up against the wall, pressing a torn piece of his shirt against a cut above his left eye. The EMT, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, knelt beside him. "Sir, we need to take you to the hospital. You might have a concussion." "I'm fine," Ike said, though his voice was rougher than usual. "You're bleeding pretty good there. Let us at least—" "I said I'm fine." He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. The woman reached out to steady him, but he waved her off. "Just need to walk it off." The EMT looked at the police officer who'd arrived with the ambulance, a young cop with the soft look of someone who'd never seen real violence. The officer shrugged. "If he doesn't want to go, we can't make him," the cop said. "You sure you don't want to press charges, sir?" "We can look for those kids." Ike gathered his scattered belongings, a sleeping bag, some canned food, a thermos that had seen better days, and something wrapped in oiled cloth that he quickly stuffed back into his pack. "No charges," he said, and walked away into the darkness. 3 hours later, Marcus Webb sat in his security office, staring at the video on his phone. He'd watched it a dozen times already, and each viewing made his hands shake a little more. Staff Sergeant Maddox had saved his life in Iraq, and now here he was, living in a garage behind the old Texaco station, getting beaten by punk kids for trying to help someone. Marcus opened an encrypted messaging app he hadn't used in 2 years. The Military Veterans Network was supposed to be for emergencies only, but this felt like an emergency to him. He uploaded the video with a simple message. "Staff Sergeant Ike Maddox, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Location: Millfield, Texas. He needs help." Within an hour, the video had been viewed 67 times. Within 2 hours, it had been shared to a dozen other veteran networks across 3 states. By midnight, 4 men who hadn't spoken to each other in years were making phone calls, checking maps, and loading equipment into vehicles. Danny Ruiz bought every prepaid phone in the truck stop outside Amarillo. The clerk, a bored teenager with purple hair, didn't ask questions when he paid in cash. 200 miles south, Tom Bradley filled his truck with gas and checked the oil. He hadn't driven this far from home in 3 years, not since his wife died and he'd started drinking too much. But some debts you can't ignore, even when you're trying to. In Houston, James Chen closed his auto shop early and told his employees he'd be gone for a few days. Family emergency, he said, which wasn't exactly a lie. The core was family, even when you hadn't seen your brothers in a decade. And in a VA hospital in Dallas, Marcus "Tank" Williams walked out during his physical therapy appointment, ignoring the protests of his therapist. The prosthetic leg wasn't fitting right, but he dealt with worse pain, much worse. None of them had called the others. None of them had made plans to meet. They'd each seen the video, recognized the man who'd saved their lives in different places and different years, and decided what needed to be done. Ike spent the next morning at the public library, using their computer to check his VA disability payments. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, had gotten used to him coming in once or twice a week. He was always polite, always quiet, never caused any trouble. She'd heard rumors about him, that he lived rough, that he'd been a soldier once, but he seemed harmless enough. "How's your face today, Mr. Maddox?" she asked when he signed in. He touched the bandage over his eye. "It's nothing. Those boys who did that to you, they're from the North Side crew, Tommy Valdez's group. They've been causing trouble all over town." Ike nodded but didn't say anything. He'd heard of Tommy Valdez. Everyone in the poor part of town had. Kid thought he was running some kind of empire out of a trailer park and 2 crack houses. What Ike didn't know was that Tommy Valdez had connections beyond the street corners of Millfield. The kid's uncle ran a private security company that contracted with the county sheriff's department. The same company that had fired Tom Bradley 3 years ago after he'd refused to falsify a report about an officer-involved shooting. Small worlds get smaller when you start pulling threads. By evening, the 4 men had found each other without trying. Danny spotted Tom's truck at a diner outside town and recognized the Marine Corps sticker in the back window. Tom saw James pull into the same parking lot an hour later, driving the same model Honda he'd had in Iraq. When Tank limped in using a military-issue walking cane, they all knew the coincidence was too big to ignore. They didn't shake hands or exchange pleasantries. They just nodded and took a booth in the back corner where they could see the exits and keep their voices low. "Anyone talk to Ike yet?" Tom asked. "Drove by where he stays," Danny said. "He wasn't there." "Probably doesn't want company," James observed. "Never did." Tank spread a county map on the table. "Talked to some people. The kids who jumped him, they run with Tommy Valdez. He's got maybe 20 soldiers, mostly teenagers, some older guys with records." "Just kids playing gangster," Tom said. "Maybe. But Valdez's uncle is Ray Morales. Owns Lone Star Security Solutions. They've got county contracts, courthouse security, some federal work." Tom's face went dark. "Ray Morales. Son of a bitch." The others looked at him. "He's the one got me fired from the security job. Wanted me to say a deputy's shooting was clean when it wasn't. When I wouldn't play ball, he made sure I'd never work private security again." Tank nodded slowly. "So this isn't just about some street punks?" "Never is," Danny said. They spent 2 days watching, learning patterns, identifying players. Valdez's crew operated out of 3 locations: a garage where they fixed stolen cars, a house where they cut drugs, and a warehouse where they stored whatever they were moving that week. The kid himself lived in a double-wide trailer behind his uncle's security company office. Ray Morales drove a new Escalade and wore expensive suits, playing the role of legitimate businessman while his nephew handled the street-level work. On the third day, Ike appeared at their motel. "I know you're here," he said when Tom opened the door. "Saw Danny's truck yesterday. James parked where I could see his plates. Tank's walking cane is regulation issue. Not many guys in this town with Marine Corps tattoos and prosthetic legs." The four men looked at each other. They'd been trying to stay invisible, and apparently they'd failed. "We're not here to cause trouble," Tom said. "Yes, you are," Ike replied. "Question is whether I can stop you." He came inside and sat on the edge of the bed, looking older than any of them remembered. His face was still bruised from the beating, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there in Iraq. A weariness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "Those kids don't matter," he said. "They're just stupid. It's the system behind them that's the problem, and you can't fix that with your fists." "Maybe not," Tank said. "But we can fix the immediate problem." "And then what? You think beating up some teenagers is going to change anything? Next week there'll be different kids, different streets, same story." Danny leaned forward. "So what do you want us to do?" "Nothing? I want you to go home," Ike said quietly. "I want you to live your lives and stop trying to fight wars that ended 20 years ago." The room went silent. Outside, traffic hummed past on the interstate. People going somewhere with purpose, while 5 old soldiers sat in a cheap motel room arguing about justice and futility. "You saved our lives," James said finally. "More than once, some of us. We owe you." "You don't owe me anything. That was the job. We all did the job." "The job's not over," Tom said. Ike looked at him for a long moment. "It is for me." But it wasn't over, and they all knew it. That night, while Ike tried to sleep in his garage behind the gas station, the 4 men made their own plans. They'd given him a chance to walk away, and he'd chosen not to. Now they'd do what needed doing without him. Tommy Valdez died 3 days later. The official cause was drowning. His body was found in Crane Creek, 5 miles downstream from the bridge where he liked to meet his suppliers. The county coroner ruled it accidental death, possibly drug-related. His lieutenant, a 19-year-old named Rico, who'd kicked Ike in the stomach that night, simply disappeared. His car was found at the bus station, but no one saw him leave town. His mother filed a missing person report that got buried in paperwork and forgotten. The third kid, barely 17 and scared out of his mind, woke up in the hospital with a severe concussion and no memory of how he'd gotten there. When he recovered enough to talk, he decided he was done with gang life and moved in with his grandmother 2 states away. Ray Morales found his office windows shot out and his security contracts mysteriously canceled. The county decided to handle courthouse security with their own people, and the federal contracts went to a company from Dallas. Within 6 months, Lone Star Security Solutions was bankrupt. The local police investigated, but their hearts weren't in it. Tommy Valdez had been a problem they couldn't solve legally, and now the problem was solved. Nobody asked too many questions about solutions that arrived from outside the system. Ike knew, of course. He'd known it would happen from the moment he saw the 4 men in town. He'd tried to stop it, tried to make them understand that violence only bred more violence. But some lessons couldn't be taught. They had to be lived. He packed his few belongings into his backpack and walked to the Greyhound station on the edge of town. The ticket clerk, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair, looked up when he approached the counter. "Where to today, hon?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "Wherever the next bus is going." "That'd be El Paso. Leaves in 20 minutes. He paid for the ticket and sat on the bench outside, watching the traffic and thinking about patterns. How many times had he done this? How many towns had he left behind when the past caught up with him? How many times had good men done bad things in his name? The bus arrived on schedule, its air brakes hissing like a tired sigh. Ike climbed aboard and found a seat near the back, settling in for another long ride to nowhere particular. He was almost asleep when someone sat down beside him. A man about his own age, weathered face and military bearing, wearing a veteran's baseball cap. "Excuse me," the stranger said quietly. "I know this might sound crazy, but weren't you Staff Sergeant Maddox, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines?" Ike opened his eyes and looked at the man. Something familiar in the face, the voice, the way he held his shoulders. "Fallujah," the man continued. 2004. You pulled me out of a burning building after that mortar attack, saved my life and 3 other guys. I never got the chance to thank you properly." Ike studied the man's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I remember. Name's Peterson, David Peterson. I've been looking for you for 20 years.